Bring in show music, please.
This is Squawk Pod from CNBC. I'm producer Cameron Costa, and on today's episode, we're talking geopolitics and the Israel-Hamas war after devastating murders in Rafah over the weekend. Author and fellow podcaster Dan Senor explains the global reaction to the conflict.
There's a sense of disorder. There's a sense of a crack up in Israeli society, and they want to know that someone is going to, kind of rein this in.
Then we move to the border. Latitude founder Sol Trujillo argues America needs a better filtration system for hopeful immigrants, for security, and for America's labor force.
How do we process more properly and smartly? Because we need workers. So the question is can we get more workers that have skills?
Plus, a strike among hotel workers, a growing spat between Elon Musk and the Brazilian government. And sorry, viewers, ABC and ESPN will be unavailable for some over a licensing dispute.
God bless those folks who are watching Squawk Box this morning.
On DirecTV.
It's Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024.
You got your Christmas shopping done yet?
Do I ever?
And Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Andrew by in 3, 2, 1. Cue Andrew.
Good morning and welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live at the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin along with Joe Kernen. We are back. The boys are back. Becky's off today, but we got a lot going on this Tuesday morning, which always feels like the beginning of the sprint from here to Christmas. After Labor Day, that's what it is.
That's not the sprint?
You don't feel like that's the sprint?
No, that's not the terminus of the sprint that we're all thinking about right now.
As it relates to an election, yes, there's an election.
How many days?
In the middle.
Do you want me to tell you?
You can tell me.
63.
63 days.
But 18 hours and 59 minutes.
And I know that's
21 seconds.
It's on your mind. We've had quite some movement in the past week, Joe.
Some Halloween stuff.
Here's how stocks closed out the volatile month of August. The Dow was up about 1.8%. The S&P 500 was up about 2.3%. The NASDAQ rising by 0.6%. The Wall Street Journal has a piece out this morning. I don't know if you saw about how Americans now love stocks. They love the stock market.
401k millionaires and Thanksgiving too before Christmas. I mean, there's so many things, but you know what? It's all going to be.
But it's the beginning of school. Everybody, kids are going to school. People are back.
They have Halloween masks.
People are back at work. And everybody's.
It's going to be.
It's a sprint. You're sprinting a marathon.
It's going to be that Friday where you start having to go shopping again. You got your Christmas shopping done yet?
Do I ever?
You're going to ask me what I want this year, or you're just going to surprise me again?
Surprise you again. Like Halloween.
I like that. Brazil ordered internet company to shut down access to X, formerly, we know it's Twitter. Over the weekend, the country's Supreme Court upheld a ban on Musk's platform after it failed to suspend accounts that one Supreme Court justice said contained hate speech and misinformation. Musk has accused the justice of censorship. And further controversy erupted when that justice ordered the bank accounts of Starlink to be frozen. Some Brazilian officials argued that the legal battle over X should never have been transferred to Starlink just because they shared an owner, deepening tensions. Starlink refused over the weekend to shut down access to X in Brazil. It told the country's telecom regulator it would only comply with that order once its accounts were unfrozen.
We'll talk about my Christmas gift in a moment. But do you think that this is going to have an impact on investment in Brazil? I mean, there's sort of two schools of thought on this. One is that he's going to fight it. And by the way, he may win in Brazil. I mean, I think one of the reasons that he's fighting in Brazil is he genuinely believes that the law is on his side. Some people have said, how is it possible that he's taking this position in Brazil, but he doesn't take these positions in Turkey? Well, the law in Turkey is not this way. In China, it's not this way. And so he believes that he's in the right. The question is whether you think if he turns out to be in the right or in the wrong, whether you think others say, you know what, I don't want to invest in Brazil anymore. And Brazil had been one of these places that people had looked to for a long time as sort of a next, I don't know, Mecca.
I like to me, this there's a pragmatic approach that you're taking. And I think in absolute terms, a lot of times, I think any type of censorship is probably something you need to push back on, especially in this day and age where we actually have discussions about whether the First Amendment is things happening in the UK right now. So, but saying that he's doing it based on the existing law, which obviously...
well, the only reason I mention that is because there are people who look at some of the things that Elon's done over the years.
Who have you talked to about Brazilian law versus Turkish law? Like, that's kind of that's in the weeds, is it not?
Oh, by the way, Chinese law.
Chinese law.
No, there's just...
If you pour it over, I mean, you got to go right to left, I think.
I have not, spent the weekend on phones with every lawyer in town.
Can you imagine having to be a legal expert on Chinese law in the United States?
You wouldn't actually have to know much.
Perplexity, grok, something.
Well, I was just going to say you don't have to know much because I don't think it's actually that complicated.
If you had to do it yourself, it might be hard. I want to see you. I want to go to the library over the weekend. I want to see you do that yourself.
Meantime, back here, a major carrier battle now leaving DirecTV customers without Disney channels. This after the sides were unable to reach a new deal. That meant that ABC and ESPN went dark during the U.S. Open tennis tournament and in the midst of the full first weekend of college football. In the story, if that story, by the way, sounds familiar, it's because a similar blackout happened this year last time at the exact same time. Disney channels had gone dark on Spectrum. For those customers, it took nearly 12 days until an agreement was reached hours before the first Monday night NFL game of the season. So you can maybe do some math about how that's going to play out this year.
I had a couple of thoughts. Are there still people that are watching DirecTV? That's still a thing.
Still a thing.
Well, kind of, it's kind of your own fault if that's where you're getting your, right? If you're not, no, that's not true. Okay, DirecTV, fine, if that's the way you want to do it. And the other thing I was...
God bless those folks who are watching Squawk Box this morning.
On DirecTV.
And thank you for it.
Thank you. You're nice. You love all your children. But DirecTV is not probably going to be the future of things.
It's harder for it to be the future of things, but you know what? In many rural areas in the country, DirecTV is the way people get access to us.
All right. Tens of dozens.
More than tens of
dozens, probably. What else was I thinking? You can, I was thinking about sports, because guess where you can bet now? Colorado.
Oh, Colorado.
Not in, you haven't disclosed where you were. You were around, but you weren't betting from all the different globe-trotting
just on the political
places.
Betting sites in Europe where you're, no, I'm joking.
They're not going well.
They're not? What's wrong with them? Are they broken?
German automaker, I'll show you one. German automaker, even the composite, not going well. German automaker Volkswagen out with a new warning. It said it can no longer rule out plant closures in Germany as it cut costs to future-proof the company. In a statement yesterday, Volkswagen CEO cited a tough economic environment, new competitors in Europe. Also said Germany's falling further behind as a competitive manufacturing location. Volkswagen said brands within the company would need to undergo a comprehensive restructuring. The announcement slammed by Germany's trade unions, or at least some.
Meantime, 10,000 hotel workers in 8 American cities on strike on Sunday. They attempted to disrupt Labor Day weekend travel. This after their union and some of the country's biggest hotel companies failed to reach a new contract agreement. And the workers at Marriott, you had Hyatt on that list, Hilton, Fairmont Hotel Properties as well, included front desk staff, you had housekeepers, and so many other employees. The union saying it is fighting for higher wages and an end to what they're calling pandemic-era service and staffing cuts that took place. Hyatt and Hilton both saying the companies are committed to negotiating in good faith and that the hotels have contingency plans to try to mitigate the impact of the strike.
You didn't fly yesterday, did you?
I did.
Did you hear about this? You didn't fly into Newark, did you?
I flew into Newark yesterday, last evening.
No issues?
Tell me what happened.
No radar. Ground halt. No radar. If there's
when they heard I was coming,
yeah, they opened it up. No, but
it.
Seriously. So I had a 3-hour delay. Got in at midnight. So I'm like, it's difficult when things like that happen, and then you got to wait, at Newark for your
right.
Sometimes the bags take as long
you should never check the bags.
Got to
check
the bags.
Pro tip. Do not check the bags.
I got to bring things that I don't wear. I could have been there months, and instead I would, But radar. But if the radar's not working for, the air traffic guys, it's like, okay, let's get that fixed. Wouldn't you rather wait? I'd rather wait. There's no rush. So did you get in?
I got in at about 9:30.
There were flights, you didn't hear anything about this?
I heard nothing about this.
And you didn't get, because I immediately got, I can read you what it said, because it was,
I'm sure you can. I don't know if the audience.
It was not, your flight is delayed because an FAA radar outage is currently preventing planes from landing at Newark Liberty International. And I thought it was across the board. I thought it was going to be just me today. I did.
Did you?
I did, because you were coming from, even more. But I don't know. I don't know what happened, but it was bad, very bad.
Cheese will be next.
Up next on Squawk Pod, what now in Israel? Over the weekend, 6 hostages were shot by Hamas in Rafah as Israeli forces closed in. Podcaster, author, and former advisor to President Bush, Dan Senor, discusses the global politics at stake in the Middle East.
There are some within the Democratic coalition who are frustrated with Biden's policy on Israel, and so they want to bring those people home. And part of bringing those people home is just not talking that much about Israel.
This is Squawk Pod from CNBC.
You're watching Squawk Box right here on CNBC. I'm Andrew Sorkin along with Joe Kernen as we kick things off. Becky's off, but school is on for so many families around the country, and this is always like the beginning, and the election. The election's coming. There's a lot going on.
That's right.
The fall is here, folks. At the White House on Monday, President Biden saying he does not think Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu has done enough to secure a hostage deal. The comments made ahead of a meeting with Vice President Harris and the National Security Team to discuss the strategy forward following the murder of 6 hostages by Hamas. Joining us right now is Dan Senor, former foreign policy advisor to the Bush administration. He hosts the podcast Call Me Back. He's the author of The Genius of Israel. And this weekend, I think, was quite a shock.
Yeah, it was.
So many people watching what took place.
Yeah, 6 Israelis slaughtered by Hamas. 2 of them I knew personally. Their families I knew personally. I didn't know them. Carmel Gott's family and Hirsch Goldberg's
family. And we were saying that Rachel Goldberg we had spent time with. His mother, who's just an amazing, remarkable person. Extraordinary
people, what they'd been through. And there was a sense when I spoke to at least one family over the weekend, they were seeing glimmers of hope. There was these rescue operations that seemed to be yielding some kind of success. There was an ongoing hostage negotiation, and Carmel Gott and Hirsch were both on the list for the first phase of a deal, if there were to be a deal that would have gotten out. So there was this cautious optimism that I think obviously has just been dashed.
Okay, so dare I ask, and let's just stipulate at this moment that Hamas is to blame, no matter how you posit the question. There are now lots of people who are saying, what do you do next? Some people are blaming Netanyahu, right? Mm-hmm. Some people are blaming, there's blame that's being cast in all sorts of different ways.
Yep.
My question to you is, where do you lay the blame, and what do you think is supposed to happen next?
Well, a couple things. First of all, what President Biden is frustrated by, it seems, is that these negotiations, they put the U.S. invests all this energy in these negotiations, and they don't go anywhere. Now, what the president has said and what the administration has said, whether it's the president himself, whether it's Secretary Blinken, whether it's the deputy director of the CIA, what they've said, I think 5 times since April 27th, is every time they've put forward some kind of proposal,
right,
Israel has agreed to it.
Yes.
And Hamas has ultimately rejected it.
And that was the argument that Netanyahu made yesterday.
Right. He said even up until 5 days ago, they were saying Israel was on board with the proposal and Hamas was rejecting it. Now, there are issues that still need to be sorted out, even though Israel is agreeing to the direction of all these proposals. One is, if Israel releases a lot of Palestinian prisoners in return for hostages, who are those prisoners? Who decides which prisoners are released? When Hamas supplies its lists of which prisoners it wants out of Israeli prisons, does Israel get a veto on some of the prisoners? Keep in mind, the entire high command that plotted October 7th were largely released from an Israeli prison in the last hostage deal in 2011. So one question is, who gets released? The other question is, how many Israeli hostages are released? Are they alive or are they dead?
But I think there's a fundamental question here, which is, on one side, you're hearing from Netanyahu saying, look, we've been saying we're willing to negotiate and we're prepared to do it, and every time Hamas has said we can't. On the other side, by the way, you have people inside his own cabinet, the head of security, saying, getting in a public fight with him over the fact that they have not pursued these settlement deals.
Yeah. Well, okay. So there are huge divisions within the Israeli government. You're talking about the defense minister saying that this is related to the Philadelphia corridor. So let's take a minute on that. This has been the issue that kind of flared up in the last few days. So what are we talking about? So the Philadelphia corridor is about a 14-kilometer corridor between Gaza and Egypt. When Israel left Gaza, 2005, 2006, it basically agreed to allow Egypt to be responsible for security in the Gaza-Egypt border, what they call the Rafah crossing and more broadly the Philadelphia corridor. What Israel has learned since 2005, only recently, is that Hamas has used that corridor to smuggle in all its weapons, all its munitions, all its resources it needed to build this labyrinth of tunnels underneath Gaza, the whole war-fighting machine that exists in Gaza that led to October 7th was largely input through there, right? So Israel is saying, and by the way, since Israel's been in Rafah in the last several months, they found 180 tunnels, and these tunnels are like vehicles.
So why is his defense minister effectively saying the opposite?
He's not saying the opposite. The defense minister has said that Israel needs some kind of security control over the Philadelphia corridor.
But there could be a temporary...
Well, he's saying if in pursuit of a hostage deal, right, we can basically leave Philadelphia and
come
go
back.
Exactly.
Netanyahu's saying we don't think we can go back.
That's the debate, right? So the military is saying, and the defense minister is saying, Israel can leave and go back. And you know what? And if it's in service of a hostage deal, then let's just do it and we'll take that risk. And Netanyahu is saying, it's not that easy, meaning it's not just a military judgment. It may be a military judgment that Israel can go back in, but it's also a political judgment.
What do you think the people of Israel think?
Well, hold on. Why is it a political judgment? Because if Israel leaves Philadelphia, you saw for months the U.S. administration, the international community was saying, don't go into Rafah, don't go into Rafah, don't go into Rafah. Israel was feeling such pressure they had to stand back. So what Netanyahu is saying is once we leave, a prime minister is going to have to make that decision, and a prime minister is going to be under enormous pressure. I think the polling on where the Israeli public is very complicated. They are tired of Netanyahu. They're exhausted with Netanyahu, right? 2023 didn't help with the judicial reform debate that tore the country apart. He's been in power for a very long time. So there's exhaustion with Netanyahu. So I think it's sometimes people conflate the frustration with Netanyahu personally as a political leader with what his actual policy is on these issues. My sense is most Israelis do not want to cut a deal that will leave Israel in a position that's vulnerable to another October 7th.
What do you think the American people think? And the reason I ask is here we are in this election. By the way, there was a viral video where Tim Walz gets asked about this. Yeah. And he doesn't even try to answer the question.
He talked about pork
doesn't even try to answer. He literally says, thanks, guys, and I'm out of here.
Right.
And so the question is who's going to...
That's the area.
Is the Biden-Harris... they're not a ticket, but the Harris-Walz ticket going to be held responsible for this? Is there a view that former President Trump would have dealt with this differently? Yeah. Do we know? What do you think?
I think there are two things going on. One, I think Americans have a sense that the Middle East is spiraling out of control. Central Command just put out a press release in the last couple of days. A couple more tankers have been hit by the Houthis in the Gulf. There's a sense that the region is spiraling out of control in ways that not only hurt our allies, like Israel, but that also has real economic and geopolitical implications for the United States. A. B. The sense that the U.S. is cracking up. Just yesterday, Andrew, just the day after we learned the news that these 6 Israelis, an American, by the way, an American citizen, was executed by Hamas. You had thousands of people storming the streets of New York. I don't know if the demonstration, showing solidarity, not just with Palestinians and the right to self-determination, they're waving Hamas and Hezbollah flags. So I think a lot of Americans who may not be following the geopolitics of what's happening in the region, look at what's happening here and saying there's a sense of disorder, there's a sense of a crack up in Israeli society, and they want to know that someone is going to kind of rein this in, and the debate over Israel becomes a proxy for a broader sense of like a.
And do you have any
here.
sense that Harris or Waltz is going to rein this in? And do you have any sense that Trump is going to rein it in?
I am completely underwhelmed I'm completely underwhelmed so far by the statements coming out of Harris and Waltz.
Well,
now that could change between now and November.
So then, say what it is. Will they end up losing votes in other states other than Michigan by coddling a certain demographic in Michigan, which is, in my view, exactly what they're doing right here?
I think they're going to.
When do Jewish people in other states say this is, it's not worth it to put all your eggs in one basket on Michigan to win Michigan? And that's what is that not what's happening? Am I cynical?
I think Michigan is part of it. I also think that, just getting into some political analysis here, some rank punditry, I think the Harris campaign calculated that they wanted this incredible rollout, this honeymoon that they got since she was put on the ticket of the last few weeks of just everyone coming together, the Democratic coalition coming together, incredible unity and enthusiasm among the Democratic coalition. And part of that was bringing dispirited Democrats home. And there are some within the Democratic coalition, among the progressives in the Democratic coalition, who are frustrated with Biden's policy on Israel. And so they want to bring those people home. And part of bringing those people home is just not talking that much about Israel. It's not leaning one way or the other. It's just keeping quiet on it. And so I think they're trying to keep their base.
But I think the question
intact.
a lot of people are trying to figure out is, are they just not going to talk about it, or are they actually going to take action on it when they, if they were to win?
They haven't talked about anything.
So that's what worries me the most. What worries me the most is that if you look at what Harris has said as vice president, leave aside what she said as presidential nominee, every time she's had an opportunity to speak on this issue as the vice president, she has unleashed criticisms of Israel and said things that are just factually incorrect that positioned her far to the left of where Biden was. So now they may say, oh, we'll just follow Biden's policy. But the statements she was making, she basically said Israel should not go into Rafah. Right. Take that as an example. Months ago, she said Israel cannot go into Rafah.
The reason this is political, interestingly, I should say, is that Rachel Goldberg, Hirsch's mother, spoke at the DNC convention.
Right.
And so it's very interesting. That's why I said this is just such a complicated.
But let me just say, one thing Harris was most explicit about was Israel cannot go into Rafah. We now know those 6 hostages that were slaughtered over the last few days were in Rafah. Right. There are many more hostages in Rafah. The Hamas high command, including Senor, are likely in Rafah. The idea that Israel was being told by Vice President Harris not to go into Rafah, based on what?
Dan Senor, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for the conversation.
Up next on Squawk Pod, Sol Trujillo. He founded annual Latino showcase event Latitude in San Diego, and before that, he was a trade policy advisor for Presidents Bush and Clinton. And now, he's pushing for smarter border control.
We're just throwing money at, quote, security, and it's not changing the problem that's there. People do want to come here. We need workers, and we need to get the right workers and put them into our system.
Welcome back to Squawk Pod.
You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC. I'm Joe Kernen, along with Andrew Ross Sorkin. I'm laughing. I've responded to someone, Andrew. See what you think.
Yeah. What have you responded to?
Andrew Ross Sorkin and Joe Squawk proudly touting their personal political biases this morning.
Who's doing that?
I just sent back, first-time viewer. I mean, have you seen the show? Don't we need to discuss these? And I know you don't, but But this is part of our appeal, is it not? That there's 50-50 in the country.
And we can have a dialogue about what's happening.
What's happening and not.
That is true.
Not necessarily want to kill each other. Our next guest is going to weigh in on the 2024 presidential race, the state of the economy, and more. Joining us now, Sol Trujillo, Trujillo Group founder and chairman. He's chairman of the Latino Donor Collaborative, co-founder of the annual Latino Showcase, which I've attended, Latitude. Back in San Diego, same place?
Absolutely.
This year, great place to have it.
San Diego.
Yes.
Wear white pants in San Diego.
You can definitely wear white pants. We were talking
Just
about
to be
white
clear.
too. So I am, you know what? I said I'm going to be curious. That's a way you start a lot of your question, because you're curious about a lot of things. And I'm curious with Sol.
Okay.
Because I have been under the impression that conservative movements, or not necessarily Trump, but that the Hispanic community since 2016 has been moving to the right. You're going to come on right now and say that in terms of this binary choice that people are faced with in this election, that you think it's an easy choice to pick Kamala Harris.
Well, I don't think I've said that, but
okay,
let me be clear
you
about.
say Trump's going to crash the economy, so I would.
If what I said was he will crash the economy if he goes forward with deporting 10 million people.
Oh, so
as he has said,
it's specific
as
to
he
that.
has said numerous times.
Could he do that? I mean, do you think that that's something that could actually
Well,
be done?
Obama deported 3.5 million.
He did.
Okay. So, I mean, he's not on my most favorite list either, because I think that is, if you look at the history, modern history of our economy, those presidents, starting with Reagan, followed by Clinton, they had the highest GDP growth rate, 3.5% over 16 years.
Okay.
And since then, and the drivers were labor force growth rate, plus supplemented by immigration. Those are the highest. And there's a common sense point that I like to make with people. Mm-hmm. And I say to business school deans, don't ever forget that an economy will grow if there's more people working with more money in their pockets. You can talk about technology, which is where I've spent most of my life. That's associated with productivity, but the core growth is spending in this economy, and we need more workers working.
So
right?
Is there a way to do it where you secure the border so that it's not illegal immigration, and you open up immigration for more legal people? Isn't there somewhere in the middle where it's just not?
Yeah. I've been frustrated by both Republicans and Democrats. I'm still a registered Republican.
Interesting.
But my point is that on immigration, we need more workers. We talked about onshoring, from China and other places. Well, we can't do it because we don't have any workers.
Would you not close, or would you not try to secure the border, though?
Yeah, secure. But there's ways to secure it, looking for the bad people, the criminal people. There's records, there's Interpol, there's all kinds of databases so we spend our time talking about what I would call the extraneous matters.
Yeah.
The big thing is, how do we process more properly and smartly? Because we need workers. So the question is can we get more workers that have skills that we can put to work in our economy? Then secondly, those that are not ready, they don't have the skills, that we put them into training programs. There's a company called Accenture that used to only hire college graduates. Now they hire people and they train them, high school graduates, and they train them for the jobs that they have. So the economy has evolved, and we have to understand it. But I call it smart immigration, which says you process people much faster than decade-long kind of processing.
So what's the cost of doing this, in your mind?
The cost is a lot lower than what we're doing today with all this building walls and all the things that don't work. We've already proven walls don't work, right? And so the question now is just the right IT systems, get the right people that understand how to do that.
As long as you have people pouring over the border who are not supposed to be here, what are you doing about that?
You put in place the processes where they can get through in a way where they're sorted out, those that shouldn't be coming in,
right,
and those that can. It's like if you ever went to Disneyland 20 years ago and you saw the long lines, 3-4 hours to get into it, did Disney say, no more, we're not going to take any more customers? Or did they fix their process of being able to process more people in a short period of time?
And you think you can do that more cheaply? I mean, you think that's
More
actually less
cheap-
expensive?
Less expensively than what we're doing today, because we're just throwing money at, quote, security, and it's not changing the problem that's there. People do want to come here. We need workers, and we need to get the right workers and put them into our system, because we're not, there was a study done by Accenture that said there's probably 25 to 30 million onshoring jobs that are available to us. But if we don't have workers, how can we onshore? So now everything's going to nearshore. What's everybody going to complain about? Well, all the jobs are in Mexico and other countries, and we didn't get them. Why? Because we weren't using our minds in terms of solving the real immigration problem, which is processing people, sorting out the people. It's a database issue.
I can't believe you're not going to come on here and brag about the Hispanic contribution to the U.S. economy, because that's what we do at Latitude, and it's always mind-boggling, the numbers that you come up with. It's like be like the fourth biggest economy in the world or something. Give me some of the. It's continuing, is it not?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and this is part of the immigration story. But the punchline is, last year we announced that the Latino cohort is now bigger than India in terms of GDP. And I can tell you in a couple of weeks.
That's a frightening.
No,
fact.
but it's
amazing.
the power of immigrants that came here, a lot of them. My family's only been here since the early 1500s. So when a guy like Donald Trump says, you know, my country, this is my country, and you know, he's a third generation German immigrant, right? So this is a country that has evolved. And you know, Benjamin Franklin used to argue against immigrants, and he was an immigrant way back when. But we've had these arguments, but let's get smart about how we do it. Smart immigration is really where. But the Latino cohort is huge, and it's growing, and when we announce the next study, I spent time with the economists last week, it's going to be gobsmacking.
Well, it almost sounds like you're a single issue vote. And we talked before you came on, I mentioned, okay, so 2016, Trump got in the 20s for Hispanic vote. By 2020, he was in the mid-30s. Earlier this year, when Biden was still in, it was 46-45. Under Trump, Hispanic real income grew 7%. It hit the lowest unemployment, lowest level ever. It got lower under Biden, but real wages are still down under Biden. I think inflation's up 20%. Hispanic wages up 16%. So the Hispanics did much better under the Trump presidency than they did under the Biden presidency.
Well, I think the data is a little bit spurious that
well,
people
it always
quote.
is.
But my point is that the Latino cohort has been doing well, and the vote, if you were during the Reagan era, he got over 50% of the Latino vote. So this is not new, that Latinos tend to be business oriented, they tend to be conservative. Right. Under George W., he got 44-45%.
Right. This would be the highest since, I think, 72, though. But Harris.
No.
But
George
Harris,
W. did
W
well.
had over 40 as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not new. The question is the Latino cohort today, let's assume that there's 60, 65 million, but to make easy math, say 4 people per household, that means 50 million households. 5 million Latino families own businesses. So you can divide 5 into 15, or say it's 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4. So taxes matter, regulation matters, and the ability to hire people.
Right.
And when you can't hire people, you're not happy.
Right. Well, out there we were talking, I mentioned some of the possible, corporate income tax increases, capital gains increases, unrealized, and you go, well, we really don't know if she's going to do any of those. And I go, well, you don't know if Trump's going to really deport 10 million. We don't know any of these things. So you got to pick and choose which things you think are really going to happen and which aren't. And then you tell me, well, you don't have any idea what she's going to do. So that's
I mean, she has not really laid out
I know.
An economic plan.
You're still a Republican, all right?
No, but I like to say, and I've said this, I'm not a Trump pendejo, which means
I know.
I won't say that until I know that he cares about all people, that he cares about building the base of the economy. And one of the biggest fears I have today is that we're losing the notion of capitalism. And I don't mean capitalism versus socialism, but we're moving into a higher and higher concentration of wealth. Right. Both in terms of individuals and companies.
That's the age-old question.
And that's
how do you
the
solve
monarchism.
that? How do you
start deploying capital.
Right. But you deploy capital. You don't just arbitrarily use transfer payments that we got to go.
I agree with that.
Okay, but we got to go. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But San Diego again, same hotel?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Sol.
All right.
Sol
Thank you.
Pitching in for the cohort.
A controversial movie about Donald Trump called The Apprentice is set for theatrical release on October 11th. This ahead of the election. It stars Sebastian Stan as a young Donald Trump. Trump's political team has threatened to file a lawsuit over the film on Friday. Trump communications director Stephen Chung saying that the October release is akin to, quote, election interference by Hollywood elites. The movie was funded in part by billionaire Dan Snyder's production company. But Snyder reportedly wanted to block its release after Trump was not portrayed as positively as he expected. You were just in Telluride.
It premiered.
It premiered there?
In Telluride. And as I mentioned to you off camera, I was, just walking along, and Jack Smith walked by me. I didn't stop him or speak to him, but he was in town. Now, there were rumors, and I didn't go to the Reagan movie or to the Apprentice movie. Okay. Because I'm not going to be,
so apolitical. Yes.
Don't want to be jaded by either. But there was, and I think Hillary Clinton and Chelsea were there. They had a movie, I think, that they were involved with as well. But there was a rumor that he was going to introduce, I think that would have been really bad if he actually introduced this thing. There's no indication that he did. His wife is a filmmaker, a documentary filmmaker, and I assume that's why he was there. But it is weird too, because I wasn't thinking about him, and he walked by, and he's kind of distinctive, the beard and things like that, and I go, whoa! Now I know who that gentleman was.
Well, somebody will make a movie about that, I'm sure, at some point. We'll see.
About what's happening.
All of this.
Yeah.
That's the podcast for today. Thank you for listening, as always. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin, weekday mornings on CNBC starting at 6 a.m. Eastern. To get the smartest takes and analysis from our TV show right into your ears, follow us here on Squawk Pod, wherever you're listening now. We'll meet you back here tomorrow. Have a great day.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.